Now let's take a look at some of the stories that have caught our eye in behind the headlines. Let's start with Boris Johnson, who seems to be taking Brexit talks with the EU to a new level of brinkmanship. The Telegraph reports the UK will accept a no-deal scenario if a deal is not struck within 38 days. The Moscow Times reports that one of the opposition leaders in Belarus, Maria Kolesnikova, has been kidnapped by masked men. She's only one of 3 women to remain in the country after joining forces to challenge longtime leader Alexander Lukashenko. Meanwhile, the Berliner Zeitung says the Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny is now out of a coma and his condition is improving. Navalny was flown to Germany last month, where doctors revealed he'd been poisoned by the Novichok nerve agent. And all around the world, restaurant businesses have been hit hard by lockdown restrictions and social distancing. The outlook is grim. The Mirror newspaper reveals Pizza Express is announcing drastic cuts and closures in an attempt to keep businesses afloat. Well, here with me to review these stories are journalist and broadcaster Ryan Chilcott and French-Algerian journalist Nabila Ramdani. Thanks so much to both of you for joining me. Let's start with Brexit, Ryan. It looks like the EU and the UK cannot agree on a divorce deal. Is this a case of brinkmanship and just each side calling the other's bluff?
Well, we don't know. I mean, if you think about it, the referendum was 4 years, 3 months ago, and we're still perhaps in posturing, right? Because there's still some 3 months to go. Tomorrow, the two sides are getting together here in London. Michel Barnier for the European Union, David Frost for the UK. And we have this proclamation from Boris Johnson that, look, if we don't have a deal in 7 days time by the 15th of October, then we're just fine to have no deal at all. But, you know, I've been watching the European Union and these negotiations with the UK and in general how the European Union works. And I really wouldn't be surprised if this went right down to December 31st.
Yeah, Nabila, how do you think, the British Prime Minister's ultimatum to reach this deal by the middle of next month, how's that likely to go down with European Union members?
I would like to think that there is enough misery in the UK at the moment caused by the coronavirus pandemic. But of course, there's always the Brexit process as well. And I must say that it is entirely predictable that Boris Johnson is now threatening the EU and indeed everybody else who is listening with a potential disaster of a no deal. The UK economy is already in free fall because of COVID-19. And economic forecasts are quite terrifying. But Mr. Johnson is clearly happy to make matters far worse in the interest of UK independence. Now, contrary to his past words, the Prime Minister is now saying that the UK will move on from a no deal and still can make a success of Brexit. But some may think that this is classic brinkmanship, as you suggested earlier. And he will accept an EU-dictated deal closer to the deadline of October the 15th. But I doubt it very much. In the end, Mr. Johnson runs a cabinet full of hard Brexiteers, and they are absolutely determined to give the impression that Britain is in charge at all times and will yield to no one. And I think, in turn, the EU doesn't want to make it look as though it allows member states to leave on better EU terms than they had before. So I think an important point here is that Mr. Johnson is once again suggesting that Britain will move on whatever happens. But in my view, this is the biggest fallacy of all. Britain will still be hugely reliant on the EU, whatever happens in October, and there will be no clean break from the EU. All that is happening is that the UK is in fact redefining its relationship with the EU.
So Ryan, if there's no deal and the EU and the UK do go on to international trading terms, like many countries around the world, is that good for either side?
Oh, I don't know that it's particularly good for either side right now. I mean, that's a very difficult question. It comes down to what happens after and how good the UK is at executing trade deals, how ready other countries are to execute trade deals on more favorable terms with the UK than the UK has enjoyed as part of the European Union. So very difficult to say, but I'm not sure I really share Nabila's view that this is going to be quite as dark a situation as she describes. I think Boris Johnson is more pragmatic than Nabila, than you're suggesting. I just think that we have a bit of time left, right? At the end of the day, I wouldn't even be shocked if we got to December and both sides agreed to kick the can down the road because of the pandemic.
Oh gosh, Ryan, please don't suggest that. I don't think any of us could stand it anymore. Let's move on to Belarus. These attempts to silence yet another opposition leader. Nabila, really brave women here standing up to the Belarusian president.
Absolutely. I mean, this story is about Belarusian opposition leader Maria Kolesnikova. It's a very disturbing story indeed. Eyewitnesses say she was kidnapped by masked men in Minsk today. Kolesnikova, I'll get there, is a dynamic young woman who had joined with two other women just like her to challenge the strong man Alexander Lukashenko in last month's presidential election. And her profile has been extremely high, and she has clearly been angering Lukashenko and his entourage. Now, other opposition candidates had been jailed or driven to flee Belarus. So the natural assumption here is that state forces may well be behind her kidnap. She's the only member of the female trio to stand in the election who remained in Belarus since the election. And the circumstance of the kidnapping certainly has all the hallmarks of an expertly coordinated abduction. Masked men in civilian clothes captured her and forced her into a dark minibus marked with the word communications. So now this happened at 11 a.m., at 10 a.m. in the morning in broad daylight.
Actually, Ryan, I just want to bring Ryan in. Sorry, Nabila, I just wanted to bring Ryan in there because, Ryan, you've interviewed President Lukashenko. EU leaders have agreed to sanctions on Belarus. Do you think that he's likely to change this hardline stance, or do you think he's going to continue to be bolstered by the support from Russia?
No, I think he's gone all in at this point. I think he's counting on Russia's support. I don't think the sanctions would necessarily make a huge difference, though that isn't to say that the European Union shouldn't impose them. I will say, when it comes to Maria Kolesnikova, if you look at what's happened to her predecessors when they have been abducted, and I'm not suggesting that this isn't harrowing and alarming, the good news, if you will, is that they've been escorted to the border, basically forced into emigration. Now, the last time, well, let's put it this way, the first time I interviewed Alexander Lukashenko was in 2001. And even then, the story was that he was behind the abduction of his political opponents. He told me at the time that wasn't the case. He was at that point, he'd already been president for 7 years, now 26 years. So then, a lot of Belarusians continued to accept him. They thought that he was more or less a good leader. The opposition didn't have the strength. I think the bigger story right now is, irrespective of these abductions, 100,000 people turned out on the streets on Sunday for the 6th week in a row. We haven't seen this kind of civil action from Belarusians ever. And ultimately, I think even Lukashenko knows that his days are numbered. And it's really the Kremlin that's in charge right now. How do they forge his exit, and what's going to come next? I think that's the bigger question. But there's no doubt that first and foremost, we should be thinking about Maria Kolesnikova right now and hope that she and the other people, even her press secretary 40 minutes later was abducted, that they're all okay.
I mean, you mentioned the Kremlin there. They're also under international pressure on another story, and that is the news of another opposition leader, Russia's Alexei Navalny, who German doctors say has been brought out of a coma. Ryan, tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, Russia's in a bit of a pickle here, right? Because Alexei Navalny was an opposition leader in Russia, is an opposition leader. I actually interviewed him in 2017, and before that in 2014. He then, by the way, told me that he thought there was a 50-50 chance that he would be killed. I'm glad to see that he's been woken from this induced coma. The doctors are saying that he's responding to sound, which is a good sign, but they say it's too early to give a long-term prognosis. I mean, look, let's hope that he recovers. The problem for the Kremlin here is that Germany just happens to be one of Russia's biggest partners in the European Union. And Russia was almost finished in completing, almost done in building a pipeline that would deliver more Russian gas to Germany, called Nord Stream 2. Merkel, through Crimea, through Donetsk, through all of the sanctions that Russia has weathered, she stayed right behind that project and said, look, business is business. We need this energy. It's good for Europe. And now even Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, is saying maybe, unless the Kremlin delivers a real investigation into what happened to Alexei Navalny and this poisoning, maybe we'll have to reconsider that project. That would be pretty much a disaster for the Kremlin, one of the last ties, at least commercially speaking, that the Kremlin has to Western Europe.
OK, all right. And lastly, the big food chains in the UK and elsewhere, all over the world, I'm sure this applies, hemorrhaging cash and jobs due to coronavirus. Nabila, big brands in the UK that are falling. Just how bad is it?
Well, I'm afraid that the stories, about Pizza Express says everything about the absolute devastation that coronavirus has caused to the restaurant trade and indeed to the entire leisure sector. Last month, Pizza Express said that the slump in revenue caused by the enforced closure of its restaurants during the pandemic meant that its rental costs were up. And they were no longer sustainable. And this means that more than 70 restaurants face closure and some 1,000 jobs will go. Restaurants can't really just set up an online presence as shops are trying to do. The whole attraction of Pizza Express is that it's a friendly, dependable, local place for people to go for a weekend treat during a day out or after a visit to the cinema or similar ventures out. Now, unfortunately, people are not going for many days out or at the cinema. And it is incredibly sad. What we all took for granted less than a year ago is all under threat now, and the whole face of the British High Street is definitely set to change.
Sure. I mean, Ryan, do you think that the government schemes, particularly here in the UK, like the Eat Out to Help Out, actually helped, or do you think that we're actually heading for a sort of full-scale economic disaster?
Look, I don't want to play down the kind of economic problems that Nabila was talking about there. Eat Out to Help Out was a fantastic success, it has to be said, though, right? I went out, I ate out with my family, as did many families here in the UK. I didn't go to Pizza Express. You ever been there? I mean, the pizza tastes like cardboard. I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian here. I've been watching global businesses for the last 15 years. That was not a particularly good one. Even last year, they were in a lot of trouble. And you will hear all kinds of businesses over this year blame the pandemic, economic conditions for their closing. In the case of Pizza Express, they were already in a big trouble, owned by Chinese private equity. The whole idea was to export Pizza Express into China. They want to open hundreds of stores there. The problem is Pizza Hut is already in China, and Pizza Hut's 30% cheaper than Pizza Express. So, yeah, the pandemic is brutal, particularly for the restaurant industry, particularly for the services industry here in the UK. But Pizza Express, if it goes, I'm not so sure.
But I mean, about all of our habits. I mean, the pandemic changed all of our habits, didn't it? I mean, eating out, shopping online, those kinds of things. It's why we're sort of seeing the continuing decline of the high street. I mean, the pandemic did change our habits.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And today, I was on my computer like everybody else, and I got a Deliveroo ad saying, it's eat in now to help out, or kind of, sort of thing. That's been a huge factor. People eating, getting food delivered to their homes. But I think more so than in continental Europe or maybe in other parts of the world, people here in the UK really do like to go out to eat. The bigger issue is will they be able to? I think, coronavirus cases are rising dramatically, and this government may find itself in a position, maybe even may have even boxed itself into a position whereby in a week or 2 weeks or a month's time, the government may be saying we have another lockdown.
OK, thanks so much to both of our guests, Ryan Chilcott and Nabila Ramdani. Appreciate your insight. And that is it from this edition of Behind the Headlines.